Okay, look, Steeler fans, I got to keep it real with you. I always keep it real with you, so I can't change now. There's no debate about this. This shouldn't be a debate. Antonio Brown's Hall of Fame case is way better than Hines Ward. There's no debate. The only argument in favor of Hines Ward is you don't like Antonio Brown and you do like Hines Ward. But that's not what this should be about, guys. This is another episode of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and, of course, SteelersNow.com. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and I am your master of keeping it real because Antonio Brown's peak was one of the best in the history of the position, okay? His peak was one of the best ever. And at one point, Antonio Brown was the best receiver in football. It's been an 11-year career to this point, and that includes a bumpy ride of drama, of out of football, of changing teams, of trying to get here and trying to do this, and eventually landing back with Brady after the one game with the Patriots and the weirdness with the Raiders in the offseason. Really, it was just the offseason, and winning a championship with Brady. But winning a championship, I'm not going to say in any way that really inflates Brown. He was a role player on that championship team. He didn't even play in the championship game prior to the Super Bowl. So I'm not going there, but still, Antonio Brown as an individual, because the receiver position, just really as much as any other position, it relies on a quarterback to help you get your numbers. And some of the best ever, okay, haven't won championships or weren't great players when maybe they did get a championship ride or something like that, like Brown. Okay, and I get Hines Ward, Super Bowl MVP, and was an integral part of a championship team. I get it. So team-wise, yeah, you give the edge to Ward. But as an individual wide receiver, as a player, as what the Hall of Fame is about, because Calvin Johnson, I was there in Canton watching this ceremony, okay? He ended up with a relatively short career, but a revolutionary career. Barely any success really at all. 0-16 was a season this man dealt with in the National Football League. There's no postseason success for him after how great of a star he was at Georgia Tech. I saw it firsthand in a bowl game against West Virginia. And to pivot that to the NFL, where he was Megatron, he was a revolutionary force, like what Barry Sanders was, the running back position. Unfortunately, the Tigers wasted both, or the Lions wasted both of them. And he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. First ballot Hall of Famer. You don't need rings to make you a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's not about a team success. Football is a team game. Individuals can be held back by the team not being good enough. If the offensive line isn't there, the running back can't dominate. If the quarterback sucks, he can't help an elite receiver, etc. It's about the team. So I'm not going to hold rings against people. It's a team game. And yes, rings can elevate you. Doing what Brady's done with 7 rings certainly is impressive, certainly can elevate you, certainly can make you potentially the GOAT. But when we're going to Hall of Fame, when we're saying should we celebrate somebody, I'm not going to say they shouldn't be there because they weren't a great player on a title team and that AB just rode a championship. So putting that aside, because again, Megatron, first ballot Hall of Famer, Randy Moss, no ring, despite great teams he was actually on, played in 2 Super Bowls, should have won one with the Patriots, but they lost in that Super Bowl game on the undefeated season. First ballot Hall of Famer. T.O. should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Again, that's probably going to be similar to how Antonio Brown's treated by the voters. But the stats were there. The Hall of Fame's there. He certainly deserved everything. These are individual great receivers that didn't have team success, didn't have rings, or in AB's case, rode a ride to a ring and wasn't a great player on that title team, but still celebrated as the greatest receivers in the game's history. So leaving that go. So yes, Ward has the team success over AB, but that's not enough to bump somebody. Ward was great in that game, but they didn't win a championship just because of Ward. If you didn't have the great defense, if you didn't have the offensive line, if you didn't have everything else, it wouldn't have happened. It's a team effort to win a championship. Okay, Dan Marino never won a title. Certainly a great quarterback still. Peyton Manning, 2 rings, 2 different teams. Should have probably won more with the Colts. The one he won with the Colts, great season for him. The one he won with the Broncos, 9 TDs, 17 picks. I have it memorized. Not a great year. He wasn't great. He's had better years in which he didn't win a championship. Okay? and he won it that year. So it's about the team. But because the receiver position is like that so much more than any other, where you're really grading them off individual performance on who's better, then again, Antonio Brown's Hall of Fame case slam dunks over Hines Ward's. And I'm not here to say, because I've done shows on this in the past, I'm not here to say that Hines Ward shouldn't be in necessarily. I don't have a problem with him eventually getting in. I could see that 1,000-plus catches, the 12,000-plus receiving yards. He's had 1,000-plus yard receiving seasons. He did play it differently as a blocking receiver. I'm not here to denigrate Hines Ward on this show, okay? Super Bowl MVP. You can throw the team success in there and say that makes him even better. I'm not against him eventually getting in. But look at the history of the sport. Shannon Sharpe, all the stats, 3 rings, a tight end, had to wait a few years. Chris Carter had to wait 6 years. All the stats at that point that you could imagine, okay? Art Monk had receiving records prior to Jerry Rice breaking them, had to wait almost a decade. Great receiver, and he had 3 rings as well. So they make people wait off individual success. I don't think it's a problem that Ward's been waiting. I do think his individual case is better than Julian Edelman. So I'm keeping it real. I'm not just hating. I'm not giving you what you don't want. I gave you what you wanted on a past show. I'll give it to you again. Hines Ward's Hall of Fame case is better than Julian Edelman. I don't care if he has more rings or in more Super Bowls. His individual seasons, his individual play as an individual, his individual numbers individually, not nearly what Hines Ward's were. Okay, Hines Ward is ahead of Julian Edelman despite less team success because he was a better individual and had better individual seasons. Julian Edelman's not a Hall of Famer for me. It's not just about the postseason. The Hall of Fame is about how good you were as an individual, you yourself. If your team wasn't good enough, then you get the recognition in Canton. And that's the case for Antonio Brown. That's the case for several others, okay? They should be there. But Julian Edelman shouldn't be there. I think Hines Ward should eventually get there, honestly. But Hines Ward's not Antonio Brown. Again, Antonio Brown was the best receiver in football at one point or another. Was a beast, was a freak show, was an athletic phenomenon, was like Megatron in terms of being a revolutionary, worked his you-know-what off to get there, not a hype machine like, say, Calvin was entering the NFL. And again, I've dealt with him, okay? He's not been nice to me. He still has me blocked on Twitter. I've had my dealings with the man. I know some other things that went on. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame person. In fact, I've said this publicly on this show, on other shows, on Twitter. I think he's a bad guy, okay? Antonio Brown is a bad man. I definitely believe that. And I feel comfortable saying it from what I've heard, from what I know, from what I've dealt with. He's not a good guy. But I don't think the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame does not deal with the off-the-field mess. That's why they're not taking out OJ. That's a whole other conversation. But it's not about your character. The Baseball Hall of Fame, you can like it or not, it's in the bylaws. You're supposed to take your character into consideration. So that's part of how the voters are voting that way. It's literally in the bylaws. You, again, may not like it, but it's there. In the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I was up there in the press box in Canton watching those ceremonies with a former Hall of Fame voter who gave me the full on. We had a Hall of Fame debate. He told me he hopes I get a vote one day because he respected my ability to do this and my knowledge, even though I'm only a year in now in the Pro Football Writers. But hey, I'll give him his just due. I won't name drop, though. I don't know if he wants me to release this information or this conversation here or talk about it. But nonetheless, he had a vote for many, many years, doesn't have a vote now, so it's irrelevant. He told me how it works. He told me what the thinking is. He told me that I kind of get what they're thinking, but, there are personal matters that are involved, like it or not. But also that it's not about your character. It's supposed to be about what you did on the football field. And that their voting, their parameters, their bylaws are not like baseball's. It's supposed to be just about the field. Again, whether you like it or not, that's what it is. So throwing the furniture off the balcony, almost killing a baby, sexual assault allegations, all of that. Not supposed to be taken into consideration. But again, we're not talking about Hall of Fame as a person. As a player, those 6 years, man, for Antonio Brown, not many were better. Yeah, Moss, maybe T.O., Calvin had some years. Of course, Jerry Rice is the GOAT. You can go down the line. Steve Largent is another one, by the way. Very underrated historically, a great receiver that never was on a title team. Doesn't always get his due. But Antonio Brown in a passing era, of course. So those stats will be inflated, but we're not talking about Antonio Brown versus a Lynn Swann, for example. We're talking about Antonio Brown versus Hines Ward. Similar era. Now, Hines Ward, a little older, little different overlap. But also, you're looking at his overall stats already having played more years, more games, more opportunities. And AB is right there with him career-wise, had a better peak, had better individual seasons. And you're looking at some of those numbers for AB, those 6 straight 1,000 plus for Antonio Brown, 6 overall for Hines Ward. And we're not talking about all in a row. So again, I get the offenses were different. I get it wasn't always the same when Jerome Bettis was in his prime versus what Antonio Brown dealt with, more of a passing Big Ben who loved to throw 70 pass attempts, still wishes he could do that, even though that's not the Big Ben of today, or you shouldn't want him to be if you're a Steeler fan, because that wouldn't be a good recipe. But Antonio Brown at one point was the best receiver in football. Okay, that was a debate. I think he certainly was. I think he was the best receiver in football for several years. I believe you did at that time too, by the way, Steeler fans. Hines Ward was never the best receiver in football, guys. He was a good, serviceable receiver. He was a hard-nosed guy. He played the position differently. I sat there at the round table as well. Alan Faneca said he was almost a lineman. He talked about how he wants Hines Ward in the Hall of Fame. They all think Hines Ward should be there. Bill Cowher brought that up too. Paul Mahler brought it up as a defensive player. I'm not arguing against Hines Ward as a Hall of Famer. I could see he's waited a little bit. Some others shouldn't have had to wait with better careers and better stats. That sucks, but they're in. He's already waited. I could see eventually letting him in. Sure, and I hope he gets to have a speech. I want him to be around for it. I'm not against that. He did kind of revolutionize that position in a different way as almost a blocking tight end / receiver and put up some numbers. 1,000 catches are there. The Super Bowl MVP is there. The numbers are there. He did have 1,000-yard seasons, even though, again, not to the level of those individual seasons of Antonio Brown. He's just not AB, guys. But that's the problem I have. That's the reason why I'm doing this show. It's not to say that Hines Ward shouldn't be in, or I'm not denigrating Hines Ward. I said his case is better than Edelman, and that's not normally the national opinion outside of Pittsburgh. But that doesn't mean it's a case better than Antonio Brown. So why am I seeing that on Twitter? Why am I seeing that as a conversation? Why am I seeing that as a debate? Why, when every one of us in media, and many of my colleagues are just doing this to kneel you guys, this show isn't intended to do that, even though I'm sure it probably will, are saying that in Cale Berger, our colleague here at Steelers Now, said that Antonio Brown's Hall of Fame case is better than Hines Ward's. That set many of you off, and you were mad, and he showed me what happened in terms of the outrage, and I saw what happened to many other colleagues in terms of the outrage and the vitriol that went in their direction. Why? What are you looking at? What numbers are you looking at? And yeah, I'm going to look at these here. I don't have these memorized, but again, Hines Ward was never the best receiver in football. Antonio Brown was. Look at Antonio Brown's peak here, guys. So I'm going to pull this from 2013 to 2018. So we're right before he's getting really insane. And I was covering him toward a little bit of this time here. Obviously not back to 2013, but towards the insanity was when I started covering the Steelers, around that time, maybe a little bit before. But 2013. Okay, 110 receptions, 1,499 yards, 2015, or 2014. Then we're looking at 129 catches, 1,698 yards, 2015, 136, 1,834, 106, 1,284, 101, 1,533. That's twice, by the way, in that time that he led the league in overall receiving yards, not something Hines Ward's done. And then 104, 1,297, and that's that year where he was upset that Juju got team MVP and Juju's numbers were better. We're seeing what Juju became now, by the way, with not having AB, because Juju's still a productive player, but he's not number one. And he's dealing with double coverage. He's dealing with number one threats, or he was prior to Claypool, after AB for that year. Harder without AB, to say the least, because AB was dealing with double coverage. He was the number one threat. Hines Ward was kind of close, okay? He might have been the best. He might have the best Hall of Fame case during his prime, but he was never the deep threat. There were other guys getting that double coverage, and he was able to then be the blocker and certainly get catches and certainly have solid seasons. But again, from 2013 all the way to 2018, you're looking at 1,000 yards every single season, 100-plus catches every single season, touchdowns galore, yards galore. And we're not even just looking at 1,000 yards here. We're looking at 1,200-plus yards in every one of those seasons except for one. or no, 1,200 plus in every one of those years, 1,600 in one, 1,500 plus in one, 1,400 plus in one. That should have been 1,500. He was a yard away. So again, Antonio Brown's stats in that peak are against some of the best in history. You could say he's not top 5 ever, top 10 ever. Maybe he would have been there if he was sane and would have had a regular career that kept progressing. Okay, but he's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer. His career numbers are there. He's a Hall of Famer. He should be there someday. And even if you don't want to put him in first ballot because you say, okay, the career wasn't long enough, he didn't continue it on, it was a great peak, but it wasn't long enough. The Hall of Fame's done that before and put guys in, maybe not first ballot, but Terrell Davis. You could say AB is the Terrell Davis of this thing. Terrell Davis got in the Hall of Fame. He had to wait a little bit, but that's a small peak as an elite running back. Okay, the 2,000-yard season, the Super Bowls, the Super Bowl MVP, but it wasn't 8, 9, 10 years. It was a small peak, really 4 years of elite football, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So this small elite peak can certainly get you in, maybe not right away. I'm sure he'll be held back because of his personal life and because of his personal dealings with some of those voters. I'm sure they will not vote for him. I'm sure they'll make him wait. If they made T.O. wait 3 years for crying out loud, he arguably is the second best receiver in the history of the sport, certainly no worse than third behind Moss or Rice. You could argue him above Moss. I certainly would. So, again, Antonio Brown has a better Hall of Fame case than Hines Ward. It's not to say Hines Ward sucks. It's not to say Hines Ward shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. It's not to say that Hines Ward's not a better guy. Hines Ward is a better person. Hines Ward has a better case for Hall of Fame person than Antonio Brown. But Antonio Brown, slam dunk 100%, there's no question, has a better case for Hall of Famer, for Pro Football Hall of Famer than Hines Ward. It's just a fact. There's no reason to debate this any further. Again, Antonio Brown's case for the Pro Football Hall of Fame crushes Hines Ward's. It just does. It's a better case. He's a Hall of Famer. Antonio Brown's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He deserves to be there and do his weirdness up on stage and do whatever he wants for 6 minutes and have it be him throwing everyone under the bus or talking in tongues. Who knows? Give it to him. 6 minutes. He's a Hall of Famer. You can't tell the history without him. Museum. It's him. He's a beast. The stats are there. Individually are there. His story is a great one. A weird one. It's going to be a 30 for 30 one day, but a great one. So again, Hines Ward is a Hall of Fame person. Hines Ward has a better case for being a Hall of Fame person than Antonio Brown, but Antonio Brown has a better case for being a Pro Football Hall of Famer than Hines Ward, and it's really, really not even close. That's it for this one. I want to keep it here. You can subscribe. So keep it here by clicking that subscribe button. You get a notification whenever we go live or we release anything here on this channel. Also head over to @PGH Steelers Now and @PGH Sports Live on Twitter to follow this channel, and also our Steelers Now site over there on Twitter, and of course SteelersNow.com for where our Steelers coverage lives. This show also can be found over there in the Steelers Talk section on Steelers Now, and of course here in the Mic Drop and Steelers Now sections here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. So again, I had to keep it real. I didn't want to do this, but I had to keep it real. Antonio Brown has a better Hall of Fame case than Hines Ward, and it's not emotional. It shouldn't be personal. It's not a problem if you say that, if you agree. I'm just right. It's just the truth. It's just reality. It's just what we watched. It's what you were arguing at that time.